Today, we bring you a recap of the 2020 thriller movie called Lethal Seduction. Spoilers are ahead, so watch out and take care. The movie starts with two teenagers, Mark and Walter, in a car talking about girls and how the first time should be for a guy. They see two women in a car nearby, and Walter tries on them, but they diss him by driving away. Mark makes fun of Walter while he tries to defend himself. Walter accidentally slips out a hint about the birthday party being held at home for Mark. In the next scene, Mark is welcomed at home by everyone. His mother, Tanya, brings out the cake for him. She tells him to take a wish, and so he does. Mark then goes in to change his clothes. As he comes out, he notices his crush, Melanie. She's seen in a bikini trying to tie the ropes to the bikini, but struggling. She asks Mark for his help, to which he obliges, but his mom steps in and sends him away. After coming downstairs, we see Mark's dad trying to engage him in a conversation, but he's totally absent-minded. And come on, who can blame him for that after what just happened? Walter comes over to him and tells him about a plan to get his parents out of the house. Mark gladly agrees to it. When his mom tells him about a church service, Mark grabs the opportunity to get his parents out of the house. He then immediately emails Walter to come over the following night. After that, Mark sets up everything at the house. The next day, Walter comes over with Melanie and his girl. Meanwhile, Mark's mother had already made arrangements with an old friend to stay with Mark in her absence. This ruins everything for Mark, yet again. In the next scene, we see Mark at a shopping store buying some items when a middle-aged woman catches his eye. She asks Mark about some machine while Mark is totally struck by her body. Outside the shopping store, she meets Mark once again and introduces herself as Carissa. She also asks him to come over and to help fix the machine that she had just bought, and even offers him to pay him for his services. Mark gladly agrees to help her out. While Mark fixes things at her house, Carissa gets to know more about him. She proceeds to get into the shower to check it out, and then invites Mark to join in as well. His heart rate and his breathing are also not under his control anymore as he joins her. They then make out in the shower and fall in love with each other. The following day at Mark's house, he seems rather happy about something, which is immediately noticed by Tanya. She goes out and tells Walter all about it. Later that day, Mark dresses up, but does not tell his mother where he's going. She tries to stop him by telling him that he cannot use the car, but to her surprise, Mark does not need it. We then see that Mark's love life is going well, and Carissa learns even more about Mark and his coding life and the new app that he's trying to build. She offers to introduce him to some guy she knows who can help him with it. Later, when she goes to the restaurant, some random guy comes over to Mark and tells him that that woman is bad news. The next morning, Tanya makes Mark sit down and talks to him about his rather bad behavior of his the previous night. Mark is not sorry at all. He leaves the house again to meet Carissa, who had told him to come to the pool. In the next scene at Carissa's house, Mark is surprised by how big her home is and learns that she's a widow. He rubs some cream on her back and they make out again after that. As Mark's behavior becomes more and more suspicious, his mom checks his phone while doing his laundry. She finds out about Carissa through his phone and then sends her a message to come over for dinner through the same phone. That evening, Carissa shows up, which comes to a surprise to Mark. She meets Tanya, and the dinner becomes awkward with all parties involved. Carissa, in an attempt to communicate, brings up Mark's app, about which Tanya knows nothing about. Carissa says that Mark could get a great job even if he totally skips out on school. This does not go down well with Tanya, who unleashes her anger and fury on Carissa for suggesting such an idea. Tanya says that Mark is not of that age yet to make such decisions, but Carissa disagrees. In the next scene, we see that Tanya is ranting about it all to her husband, Randy. She implies that Carissa is a bad influence on Mark. Outside the house, Carissa tells Mark to stand by his words and be a man of honor as he apologizes for his mother's behavior. We then see that Mark and Carissa are making out in the pool while Mark's hands are cuffed inside the pool. Back home, his mom seems to be getting worried, but she also thinks that she should respect the privacy of her son. Tanya finds out a bit about the death of Carissa's ex-husband. The next morning, Carissa suggests that they should hang out at the beach, and all of a sudden, her bell rings. When she opens the door, she finds Tanya is outside, and the two of them are getting into a heated argument as Tanya demands to see her son, and Carissa refuses to let her do it, and finally ends up slamming the door on her after collecting the basket she brought. Meanwhile, Mark, who's trying to find some clothes, accidentally finds a gun, but returns it to its place after admiring it. After this, Carissa asks Mark to move in with her, but he denies, saying that he'll be leaving for summer school soon. Hearing this, she gets upset and cancels all the plans for the day and asks him to go home and see his mom. Soon Walter comes to pick him up, and on the way back, Mark is bothered by the questions Walter keeps asking about what he did with Carissa. Walter says that Mark should have accepted the offer to move in with her. Back at Mark's house, Tanya is still ranting to Randy about being worried about Mark and that she thinks he's under some spell. To which Randy replies that they should let Mark learn from his mistakes, and to do that, he must have the freedom to make mistakes first. But Tanya disagrees. Later, Mark apologizes to Carissa on a phone call, and they both decide to meet up the following day. As this goes on, Melanie comes to visit, and Tanya asks her if she would like to go out with Mark. As the two of them hang out, Carissa sees them from a distance. As Melanie gets in her car to go back home, she's attacked by Carissa inside the car. Carissa warns her to stay far away from Mark. The next morning, Mark calls Melanie, but she doesn't answer at all. Meanwhile, Tanya tells Randy about Mark and Melanie getting back together, but he leaves saying that she's pushing everyone away. Mark is seen getting no answer from Melanie, even after trying many times. He resolves to stay with Melanie and get away from Carissa. After that, Carissa visits the aquarium where Randy works to talk with him about Mark and Melanie getting back together. He mutters that she's a siren and asks her to leave. In the next scene, Walter goes to Carissa's house to tell her about Mark's decision to break up with her. She goes on to pick up a knife to cut a pumpkin in the next scene. Meanwhile, Mark is on a video call with Melanie, but she sounds really bothered and nervous and ends the call very soon. Right after that, Carissa calls Mark and lures him by saying she'll pitch his app to her friend at Digital Intel to make him come over to her house. When Mark gets there, he's told that the idea for the app is already taken by someone else, but he's brilliant enough to get a job if he wants. After this, when Mark prepares to leave, Carissa does not let him do so and tells him that she wants to celebrate his new job. She then tricks him and knocks him out with a bottle from a blind spot. We see Carissa tie up Mark and then proceed to make love with him against his will. The next morning, we see that Tanya is worried about Mark not returning from where he went the previous night. She then calls Walter as well about the matter. In the next scene, we see Mark being tortured by Carissa with a sharp rod. She asks him not to make any noise and save up his energy. After this, Tanya goes to Randy to ask him if he had recently contacted Mark, but he says no. Meanwhile, Carissa checks Mark's phone and gets to know that his mother has been trying to contact him. So she texts Tanya with Mark's phone to come and pick him up from her place. Tanya goes there immediately and asks Carissa to let her son go at once, but Carissa engages her in a discussion. She then forces Tanya to wear handcuffs if she wants to see her son again. After this, Carissa throws Tanya into the same room with Mark and gives her a gun with a single bullet in it. She asks her to either end the misery of her son or to kill herself. In the next scene, we see Randy trying to call Tanya while her phone is in Carissa's possession. Soon Tanya notices that Mark is cold and cannot respond, so she decides to kill herself, but the gun only clicks. Carissa says that she'll not open the door till she hears a gunshot. Tanya uses the only bullet to free Mark and pretends that she shot herself. When Carissa opens the door, Tanya successfully knocks her out. As Tanya and Mark run, Carissa rises up to follow them, but Randy shows up just in time to take her out. Suddenly, Randy hears a noise from a box nearby, and when he opens it, he finds Walter inside. They all go back home. In the next scene, Walter is helping Mark load his luggage for college. He bids Tanya and Randy and leaves. Thank you for watching till the end. Make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel as well to know when we upload a video.